Anybody who's listening out there, partnerships and networking are so key to getting to where you want to go. And I've been asked that myself on podcasts, like, what is like one of the things in the early days that really helped me get from where I was to where I wanted to be? And hands down, it was networking. I mean, I talked to anyone and everyone who would listen to me, ramble about real estate and, just like, you got to learn about this thing. And then, lo and behold, other partnerships started to form. People would say, well, the next time you did a deal, let me know. And so get out there and start talking to people, because you never know who you're going to meet and what kind of deals you might be able to do. So I love all of that.
That's exactly right. Like, even when I first started, I was like, I think 2 years before I even found Bigger Pockets. And like, once I was on there, I was like in the forums talking to people. And in just a year and a half after I found Bigger Pockets, I tripled my portfolio just from networking with people online.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yep. Yeah, totally crazy. That's so wild. When I first stumbled upon Bigger Pockets 4 years ago, I was selling a property here in the Bay Area and was like, what do I do next? And Googled something. I don't know what I Googled. And it was like an article or a forum in Bigger Pockets. And then I fell into a rabbit hole. And here I am, quit my job, raising millions of dollars every year, buying apartment buildings. So it's wild. The power of networking is crazy. Okay, Felipe, I want to talk with you a little bit more, because I'm sure you've got some tips and tricks up your sleeve. And so tell us a little bit more about you and how you got to, so you're at 8 units right now, right?
Correct.
Does that include the RV or no?
8.5 then, right?
Okay, 8.5. All right.
So what I do is we have 8 single family homes converted into duplexes. So 16 dwellings and then 8 structures, if that kind of makes sense, plus the RV.
Interesting. And do you have to, when you bought those properties, did you check zoning to make sure that you could convert them, or what does that look like?
Yeah. So learning curve, right? I'm one of those guys that's just like running through the wall. And as I hit roadblocks, I worry about it then. So yeah, the city called me one day. I was like, Felipe, you have 6 cars in front of the house. What's going on? And I'm like, oh, well, let me explain. So I asked the lady, I said, are we allowed to have, how many people are we allowed to have in a dwelling in this city? And they're like, well, 4 people that are unrelated can live together. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, great. So 2 brothers living together. She's like, doesn't count. I was like, great. That's actually a whole lot of people. Now, obviously, we don't want to have 1,000 people in a house, but what we do is we rent the upstairs to a family and the downstairs to a separate family. And it's not considered, breaking any codes or any laws like that. Now, it is different if we have to separate the mailboxes or separate the utilities. Then it's 2 separate dwellings and you do have to zone it separately as a multifamily. But since I leave the address the same and leave the bills under my name anyways, then I'm abiding within the laws.
Interesting. How did you even think to do that in the first place? I mean,
if you remember, when my parents got divorced, that's what my mom did. She did it in the downstairs.
Right.
She rented to a family in the downstairs. So I said, okay, great. So now my mom pays her mortgage by them. But I was like, wait a minute, what is my mom doing with her mortgage that she was paying before? So my cash flow on one of these houses is about $1,200 per house. So I'm cash flowing about $1,200 to $1,000 per house.
Wow. That is wild. That is so wild. So are these all in the same area?
They're like within a mile of each other. Yeah, I buy literally this one little section of Nashville, Tennessee called Antioch. It's a very C+ neighborhood. It's empty from 9 to 5, full from 5 on, right? Everyone's going to work. It's super blue collar. And I love it because most of my tenants are like traveling construction workers. So when you hear of traveling professionals, your mind automatically goes to nurses, right? But we tend to forget, like, the people that are working in your downtown building these high rise, only about 60 to 70% of those people actually live in the city. The rest were brought in by those companies because they didn't have to want to retrain certain, material or things that they're going to be using. So they bring in professionals in that field of welding or a crane driving or whatever. Instead of retraining, they just pay them 12 months or 18 months worth of contract and say, hey, if you live in Nashville and work on this, we'll give you 18 months guaranteed work. And they get, $2,000-$3,000 of living expense. But most of these guys don't bring their family, right? They just go home on the weekends or whatever. So they're like, oh, I can rent a bedroom from Felipe for $500 to $600 a month, all bills included. Or I can go pay these $2,000 and rent a house that I don't need, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a win-win for everyone.